Sex, Dirty TV. We're so glad that you're here. We know that life is full, right? We want it to be full of fabulousness. So taking the time to invest in your relationship, invest in intimacy, and for tonight's topic, learn how to end an argument in the heat of it, right? So in a moment, we're gonna get to, we have 3 juicy tips from our awesome interviewees today. But we're going to give you first a bit of their bios. But before we even get to their official bios, we just want to first just say hello. And, you know, it's so great to have you two on the show. But we'd first like to ask everyone, you know, how did you meet? Or, you know, what is your motto for your relationship? Just anything that you want to share with us, Alexandra and Rod, about your relationship before we get to the nitty gritty of the bios.
Share.
Give us a little scratch and sniff flavor, the two of you.
We
Again,
met,
your motto,
we met in medical school. We met actually in the first introductory week of medical school. And the 2 things that stood out for me about Alexandra, one was seeing her turning pages for the pianist in this quartet that was performing. And of course, I was captivated by her and not by the music. And then later on,
Captivated's a good start.
It was a wonderful start, but then later on, she was the person in the room when the lights would be out, the slides would be up, there'd be a lecturer lecturing, and then the lecturer would pause and go up and write something on the blackboard, but it would still be dark in the room. And out of 106 people, Alexandra was the one who would consistently raise her hand and say, excuse me, if you want us to be able to see what you wrote on the blackboard, you need to turn the lights on. And her just being so awake and aware made all the difference for me.
Ah, well, we love it when a man loves a woman that speaks her mind. That's a great start.
That's right. We grew our relationship passing notes back and forth. But the thing that I want to share right now is, let's see. Rod, you've been practicing medicine since 1998. I was a physician. I'm now a relationship coach. And we, of course, live very connected lives, but we haven't done that much together professionally. And this is the first time we've ever, this is like a coming out debut to be interviewed together about relationship in this way.
I love it, love it. We have the
premiere.
honor of having for many couples, because sometimes we interview relationship experts and sometimes it's couples that don't have anything to do with the relationship world. Sometimes the couple are both in that relationship expert world, or often, you know, it might be one or the other, but we've had, I don't know, at least 10 or 15 couples that have had their first interview together on the show. So we're honored and delighted. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I have to say, it said a lot to me about your show that you wanted us both to be on, because there's so many people teaching all kinds of things, really in every industry, but certainly in the relationship coaching industry. And there's something about having both of us on which just keeps it real, makes it real. We have to really, you know, anyone listening to us can judge if we are walking our talk or not. So it says something to me about your perspective, and I really love it. If I ever have any kind of a show, I would want to have the same approach.
It's the dynamic, you know, sometimes a couple will give a tip and then they'll kind of be like nuzzling into each other. And, you know, it's just really nice to see that, just that space in between the couple. So
yeah, I'm aware, even as you ask a question, I'm used to going forth with my answer. And I know Rod is absolutely masterful in owning the room and going forth with his answer. But here we're like lifting the curtain and people can see, oh, you know, which one of us is going to talk right now?
Yeah. And which curtain's going to be lifted? Well, only the curtain.
That's right.
And this is tonight a real juicy topic, you know, with keeping the fights clean during, you know, it's the one that people have really the greatest challenge when we get emotionally hijacked. So, you know, it just makes more sense for a couple to be talking about it. And I can imagine if the two of you went through medical school together. My mom is a doctor, and she went through medical school when I was like 8 years old to 14 years old. So I was there for all of that, and I remember how stressful it was. So you guys must know something about how to end an argument in the middle of it, regardless of the professional experience, but just that level of stress. And those to our audience who are watching, maybe, you know, I was talking to one couple today that they have 3 kids under the age of 3. You know, there's all sorts of, you know, it might be that there's a health issue in your relationship. Life is stressful. So today, well, let's look at those bios so we can get to the tips. We're going to talk about how to unhook even in the heat of an argument. So thanks for bringing both of you and your relationship today. We're excited.
Oh, thanks so much for having us.
Awesome. Okay, so let's actually get into the official bios.
Official bio. Should I start?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So Alexandra, which I just love that name. My brother's middle name is Alexander. It's just such a beautiful name. As she's mentioned, she's a physician and she's turned to a relationship coach. It's someone who's really choosing a new career. And it's just so great. You're choosing to help others find this access to love and great relationship. It tells me something about your relationship as well. She has studied the science and art of emotional and sensual connection. You want to not leave either one of those out, right? That's why it's Fights Clean Sex Dirty TV. And she helps others create joy, freedom, and connection that they desire most. She has 20 years experience guiding men and women on how to bring pleasure and purpose back into all aspects of their married life, from the daily grind of your just day-to-day household, the functional way of living, all the way to the ecstatic experiences in the bedroom. So Alexandra, thank you so much for being with us tonight. You can find out more is at alexandrastockwell.com.
Thank you. It's really a treat to be here.
Welcome.
Great. Why don't you do Raj?
I get to do Rod.
Raj gets to introduce Rod.
Awesome. So Rod is a holistic medical doctor majored in neuroscience at Harvard University. It's not every day.
Just, neuroscience, you had a couple of flashcards, he might know a couple of things on, I love neuroscience. I'm fascinated to see how we can even pull that in tonight on how to use your brain to pull out of an argument by understanding how it works.
Mm-hmm. And Rod,
you really need to know.
Yeah. I grew up on the East Coast too, went to BU for a couple of years, so right around the corner before I transferred over to Cornell, but good to see you.
Neighbors.
What did you major in, Raj? I hear Gabby loves neuroscience. What is your love and passion in terms of the intellectual world?
That's a long question to answer. Just very briefly, I studied mechanical engineering way back in the day. I co-founded this company, Spec Products. I was a product designer, iPod, MacBook accessories. Now I'm a business consultant. And I participate with Gabby in all of our beautiful relationship work.
He takes relationship practices and brings them into companies to create awesome relationships, cultures, and scaling. And I take his business practices and bring them into the relationship coaching.
Yeah.
So
beautiful. I'm glad I am.
Change, right? From mechanical engineering to business consulting.
Yeah. And Rod, I'm just really interested in so many of the things here. Worked as an instructor at an experiential self-defense program in Boston, amazing. And witnessing comprehensive healing among rape survivors inspired Rod to become a physician.
That's so powerful.
Wow. Lots of amazing background with both of you. And as we love to do, we love to share
the shared bio. Yes. Well, 1 + 1 is not 2. This is the alchemy of coming together in these two genius spirits. I love the gaze, and it's the gaze here with a giggle as well. It's a great shot here. And as they mentioned in their story, they met in medical school, 25 years they've been together. And as a foundation, they share their commitment to their own and each other's growth. Personal development is just a part of who they are. We love that. I call Raj the Energizer Bunny of transformation. He just keeps growing and growing. Both of them are deeply committed to their own and one another's healing, and obviously healing with the work they do in the world. They're committed to changing the cultural narrative that passion dies in long-term relationships. They're going to throw that one out, replace it with the enlightened understanding of the emotional richness and erotic juiciness that is uniquely available with a lifelong partner. Amen, Alexandra and Rod. I love that.
The best sentence ever.
Yes, the whole idea that it's worse, you know, it's hot coal and flame, and then it's just ashes, then it blows away to nothingness. It's been the opposite for us. It just keeps getting better and better and better. So thanks for bringing it tonight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it really is one of the main outcomes and focus of our work is that, like, the continual improvement, up-leveling, increased juiciness, whatever you'd like to call it. Like, life just gets better when your partnership gets better. And if
Especially when you build the habits for that.
right, which allows it to get better. And when your relationship stagnates or declines, your life kind of stagnates and declines in large part.
And I love the theme of what you do, because what you do in the fights and the conversations and the communication affects everything else, including
Certainly the sex in the bedroom.
It's so crucial to whether the relationship has the passion or doesn't.
Right. Beautiful, Rod.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're cranky over something that someone said or someone did. It doesn't leave a whole lot of room for intimacy, connection, and sexiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nope, unfortunately, because if I could have great sex and resentment together, I think I'd go that way.
You're like, that's not
I've tried it. It doesn't
That
work.
doesn't work.
That's great.
fine. Okay.
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, we're going to get to talk tonight about what does work. And those of you who are familiar with the show will know that it's called Fights Clean, Sex Dirty TV, because the day Raj and I got married, we asked people for their advice, and someone said to us, that's all you need to know for great marriage is keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And of course, by dirty, we mean in the best way possible, as we like to say, save being nasty for your sex life. But timing's everything, right?
Yeah, and a lot of my background in terms of systems and just thinking logically, we just started generating, hey, there's different tips for different times. And if we organize our content that way, then people would be able to find what they want when they need it most. So we looked at these 4 stages, both in Fights Clean and Sex Dirty: before, as it starts, during, and after.
Because of course, in the middle of a fight, if you use a tip for what you're supposed to do to reconnect after a fight, it's probably not going to go very well. And if it's just, the middle of the day and there's something that you would do right in the heat of it in the middle of sex, and you just walked up to your partner while they were working with the client, that would be a little weird too. So timing is everything. And tonight we're going to focus on the particular time of when you're in an argument. You go to the next slide for me, Raj.
Yeah, one of the things about this is, go ahead.
Yeah, I really love this whole model. For all the reasons the two of you have expressed, but also it can be so helpful when someone has a lot of feelings and intensity, just to be able to place myself on the map, bring some perspective and some sanity and some empowerment, honestly, because when things are intense, it can feel so chaotic. And this whole paradigm doesn't dial down the chaos, but adds to it this whole coherence. I really love it, and I'm so glad to know you're a mechanical engineer, because I can feel all that in the paradigm.
Yeah, totally.
And the other thing I would say is that people often have a strength in one of those areas, and being able to see that and appreciate that and just work on the other areas instead of feeling like, oh, the whole relationship isn't working.
Yes, it's so great. You guys bring up some brilliant points.
Really articulate.
Distinguishing relationship, so it's not just like this big morass of like, I don't know what to do, gives people empowerment. It gives people the ability to like, oh, let's work on that, and kind of break it into pieces and parts, and not just be like, oh my God, there's just so much, right? And the other point that I just want to make is that with this framework, you can come up with your own tools. And it's almost like open source relationship coaching, right? Because that, like, we weren't trained as relationship experts. We basically figured out how to have an awesome relationship and continue to work on that. And then because we have this ability to distinguish different parts, we can be like, oh, that's a before thing. Oh, that's an as it starts thing. So
although there is that master's in education with an emphasis
got all
in
that,
counseling,
sure.
so yeah, we did a little studying too.
Yeah.
But tonight's topic, you can see, if you see a heart and a halo, that means it's for keeping the fights clean. And if you see a heart with the devil horns, that's for keeping the sex dirty. So tonight, this week, is keeping the fights clean with the halo, and it's shaded in for during. So if you're here live, you can go ahead and put something into the comments on either Zoom or Facebook. We'll go ahead and send you our cheat sheet here, which has 16 of our top tips summarized to one sentence for keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty. So that just when you can't think straight, you pull it out of your wallet, maybe it's printed on the refrigerator, or you put it on your screensaver so you're memorizing them, so you have at least those 16 tools in your tool belt ready to go. So just go ahead and put a comment in there and we'll get that to you right away.
Yeah, and just a little bit more about the during phase. During is when you're really in it. Not before, not as it's coming on, or not after. It's like in it.
In it! The escalation has already happened.
Yeah. And,
Yes.
most likely your rational mind, your conscious mind is not online as much as you need it to be. And I just feel so grateful to have both of you and your vast experience in this realm to hear what
And
you
a
have to say.
neuroscientist
Yeah,
too, right?
Awesome.
I know I was going to talk about the lower brain and the amygdala and how that takes over, and you want the frontal lobe for consequences and empathy to come on board. We'll get to all of that, but I'm really excited.
So if you want to learn more about what we have to say about how to keep the fights clean during, you can check out these other articles on our P3 Party blog on our website. Just look for this symbol. And you can look at our Stop Shift Start tool, so the so-so moment, etc.
Yes, and there's also some quick tip video clips. Some of these are blogs and some of these are 3 to 5 minute videos. So if you're watching this, especially if you come on a replay for this topic, look around, find some of the other ones. And if not us, look elsewhere. Look to Alexandra and Rod with their work that they're doing. Just find what inspires you. It doesn't have to be us or them. Or even a long-term commitment. Just explore and play full out for what to do to keep the fights clean during.
I can't wait to get that list too. Some I can infer what the tool is and some I can't from the title. So I'm so excited.
Yeah, and one of the things with learning new tools is mostly we're not taught how to have a awesome relationship. It's all these societal conversations that we inherit in the movies, and
or it's more mistakes of like, whoop, that didn't work so well. How do I avoid that happening again?
Yeah.
Right? Well, this tool that we have for today is in the realm of communication. And I know we have 3 great tips coming up as well from our esteemed guests, but we're going to go through this tip. Now, this tip is broken up into actually a 3-week course, our communication course that we do. So this is going to be like the 5-minute condensed version of it. But there's just a couple of key concepts that you want to keep in mind with communication. So this is when you're in the middle of an argument, you want to pull the emergency brake and you may just say to each other, hey, let's do a send receive play. That means we're not listening to each other. We're not hearing each other. This willy-nilly just throwing our communication out there is not going very well. Let's slow things down and actually grab onto a communication tool for support. Raj and I, we call it holding onto the handle rails. So imagine, you guys are from the East Coast there, right? So you're walking on ice. You want to hold on to something because it's slippery. You're having a difficult conversation. You're in the middle of the fight. Pause, and Raj will even pretend like he's throwing a flag on the play. He's from a soccer background or something like that. Send receive play, much like our Stop Shift Start tool, which you can check out. So this is about the send receive play tool, right?
And oftentimes people don't have a lot of skill in how to communicate effectively. So what they do is they just send triggers back and forth to each other. That's why you kind of stay in the during thing. You're not listening. You're not moving anything forward. You're just like slinging zingers at each other back and forth. Not always the case, but to actually have a way to actually listen and respond in a way that moves things forward is super important. So if you can even master the basics of this, you're definitely going to up-level how things go in the during phase of argument.
Because the reality is our default, especially if we're cranky or under-resourced, our default is to be a crappy communicator. You're blaming, you're lashing out, you're talking over each other, you're using you statements instead of I statements, talking about one thing when there's really something else going on underneath. So this is more about the quality, being a quality communicator. So a couple of parts with this send, receive, play. I noticed when I had our assistant change the image, part of the words have been cut off here, so we'll put the rest in the comments, but it starts with the sending. So the goal of, if you're gonna send a communication, the goal is to be clear. So often we just wanna get something off our chest and it comes out like emotional vomit and causes damage. So that's what not to do. What you do wanna do is in advance, think about what your intention is. This memory tool is called the IT Art of Win, and that just stands for what's your intention, what is your tone of voice, do you have, the A is for, do you have an appointment? The R is for, have you reinforced? Have you said, hey, thanks for all you are doing in this topic? If you, let's see, what is the, I'm blanking on the other T there. Let's take your turn. What are your feelings? The O is for your, the observations of the facts. The F is for your feelings. The W stands for words. What words are you using? Make sure you're not using inflammatory words.
Not
Like,
using any of them is probably a good idea.
yeah, that's a good idea. Just simply making eye contact.
Well,
Which
I
brings
meant
us
not
to,
inflammatory and not exclamatory.
oh, not inflammatory or
Yeah.
exclamatory. I was thinking of
No I word.
exclusionary word or inflammatory, like always, never, things like that.
Yeah.
And is for your needs. But in essence, it's just this message is about get intentional in advance, create an attention, identify what your human need is underneath that, what's the emotion you're feeling, and deliver that message. So take a pause. It might be 10 minutes. It might be a day. If you're in the middle of a fight, just call a timeout. We're going to do a send, receive, play. Each person take a moment to think of what are they feeling and what are the needs underneath it. You want to do the receive?
Sure. So on the receive side, because you're essentially giving someone space to say something, right? And if they're following the general guidelines of topic, I statements, etc., you then need to have the skill to receive that communication. And so there are some key points to that, just as there are with how you actually send something to a person. And so what do we call these again?
Mnemonic.
The mnemonic is make sure communication creates victory every time. Okay, so yeah.
I don't want to jump in
Oh,
if you're
go ahead.
so sorry.
You can
Go
jump in.
ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see each letter is highlighted there. The M is just for mirroring, making sure that you're, whether the pace, just that the dynamic that you have, that your partner is exhibiting, that you're meeting them there. The S is for summarize, just be brief and summarize what you heard from them. The C is to, get clear, make sure that they said everything that they wanted to say and that you got it accurately. And the second C is for getting complete. That's the whole goal of this one, to make sure that they feel they've gotten to say everything they possibly can. The V stands for validate, just saying I get your experience even if it's not mine. And the empathizing is just that you feel the feelings that they're feeling. So I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but the gist of this receiving them is just get them. It's not to rebuttal. It's not to have a comeback. It's not even to figure something out. It's just to really give your partner the experience of being heard. Now, the last one that wasn't showing up here is the play, which is about getting creative. Now that you both have heard each other and you feel seen and validated and empathized, most often an issue resolves itself. People just want to be heard, and the argument is happening because there's blame happening and defensiveness and pushback. But if you can bring this commitment to just hear each other first, then there's a new space to be creative together. So the mnemonic on that one is to get on Go Street. And Go just stands for make it a game. Like, hey, I don't know, well, let's try this. O stands for options. We could do this, this, or this. What do you think we should do? S stands for start small and go slow. Don't pick the biggest issue, take one issue at a time. And then take turns. Make sure that your partner has a turn to feel totally heard first, and only after they can feel completely heard, then do you take your turn. But don't be going back and forth and back and forth. So the long and short of this is make sure that one, you stay in your lane, taking turns, knowing who is the sender and who's the receiver. And if you're in the middle of an argument, just pretend to throw down a flag and I call a send, receive, play. And let's just pause so that you can just, the goal isn't to fix it. The goal isn't to have it figured out. The goal isn't to get the other person to change their mind. The goal is just to hear each other. Have you noticed this, Alexandra and Rod, that if in an argument, sometimes it's, you don't even need to discuss the issue, but if someone, takes it a step forward and apologizes or just hears you in some way, that it de-escalates it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to say, just apropos of your thing, that it's very different to be in an argument or to be having a soccer moment together. And if you can be aware enough to choose to be in a soccer moment together and be able to call a timeout and play your game and send and receive, then you're actually not having an argument anymore. You're doing something else together in your relationship. And that's one of the things about neuroscience is what is the state that you're in, state-dependent learning. And so when you can switch to being using a different part of your brain and a different mode, then already you're more than 50% of the way there. That you've both agreed that you're going to do this send, receive, play that you've talked about doing in the past in this moment.
It's kind of like interrupting that neural pathway. The amygdala has fired, the fight or flight response is there, and then that frontal lobe is like, wait a second, just 1 minute, I see a different path. And you can shift out of that. As you say, though, the real issue is the commitment to do it. So it's building a culture of goodwill, that this is just what you do when it gets intense, whether it's this tool or another tool, but you use some sort of tool to unhook from it.
And the beauty in relationship where both people are really working together and separately on growing and making the relationship nourishing to both. The beauty then is that both people don't need to have that awareness. Both people don't need to tap into the frontal cortex. As long as one person does, with the courage and conviction that can require as this habit is being formed, and really take a stand for using the tool despite the intensity and the out of controlness of the moment, then that person can take a stand for the whole relationship, which serves them both.
Either person can
It's like you only have to have one sane person at a time. What did we have said before? It takes two to tango, but it only takes one to end an argument.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
You gonna say, Ron?
Well, I was just saying the masculine version of what Alexandra said, which is that either person can throw the card down. You don't both have to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's often the way it goes.
No, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Raj.
I was just going to say that that's often the way it goes. It's not like you both are all of a sudden like, hey, let's end this argument. One person has enough space to be like, hey, like this isn't really what we're committed to.
And I can tell you there's many a times where I am not prepared to end an argument, and Raj will do something so disarming that it would be just like blatantly just gross for me to not, accept his olive branch. Or, there have been times where I've said something really bitchy and nasty and he hasn't taken the bait, and he has said something pretty nice and caring and compassionate back. And I'm like, oh, it's like he's upping the bar of like, oh, I better, like, I'm going to look really stupid here if I still remain bitchy.
But that's already an advanced move to think, oh, he's given the olive branch, it's really best for me to shift. What I think ends up being the most transformative for couples is, especially when it's the man who says, here, I'm throwing down the card, let's use this tool. And in a heteronormative couple, the woman is intense and she's not done saying what, venom she wants to say. And for that man to find the courage and stand by the tool that they've both agreed to use in the heat of the moment takes so much courage and is so empowering. And if he does that, he has so much more self-respect and she has so much more respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
When he holds that card despite what she's bringing. I find that
Mm.
such a beautiful moment when that becomes
Mhm.
possible in a relationship where often it's the woman's emotions that are driving when things are allowed to end or transition.
It sure can be. It sure
Mhm.
can be.
Mhm.
Well, speaking of transition, should we transition? You had something
Just one last
else?
thing about this, and then can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. It's is that it took a while to develop the capacity to hold that space, right? Because I sometimes say that my head feels like it's going to explode in the middle of our arguments, and when your head's going to explode, it's not like you have the capacity to be like, hey, let's slow down here for a second. So it's really going on. So there's some work there to learn how to hold that energy, because like you can be triggered all over the place, either the man or the woman, and to be able to, in the face of the trigger, get yourself to calm down a little bit and get present to what you're really committed to. That's been one of our big things, is just like, we don't have a lot of spare time, nor do we have a lot of desire to like suffer. And when you get that you actually have a say in how much time you waste in an argument and how much you suffer around it, then you just are motivated to like, hey, let's figure this out. So throwing that card down and putting a pause and generating the conversation is an awesome skill for either person to generate, and it does take something. So thank you for presencing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
It is true, honey. I'm really glad that you say it was difficult. It's much easier now, but that's because we've built a culture for it.
yeah,
That what was
Totally.
normal for us a year ago or 10 years ago is very different than what's normal for us now. Like 3 years in, we said, you know what, we just don't want to do any name calling anymore.
Mhm.
So our fights looked very different after that, when it was like, that's just off the table. It just lowers your stress just to know nobody's going to whip out like a fuck you or something.
Yeah.
I just whipped it out, but
Sure.
that was just for an
Nice.
example.
You would do that with a smile. That's different.
Yeah.
That's different. That's different.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where we just recently noticed we were being kind of pissy with each other. Was that the word we were using? Pissy?
It was
Snippy.
a snippy. We were being snippy the other day.
And
Yeah.
we were just like,
That's not
why are
us.
we being so snippy?
That's
This is just not. Whereas before it would have been like, why are we arguing? Now it's just like the level that's acceptable is definitely lower and lower.
So for those of you that are watching, look for yourself right now. Where is that threshold? You can even put in the comments, is there something that you're declaring? As Raj and I said, we declared, no more swearing at each other. It might be that when someone calls, a timeout, that you both agree to count to 10, whatever it is there something that you're going to leave behind? So personalize this right now. And if you don't want to put it in the comments, that's fine too. Or if you're watching it on the replay, but even just physically for yourself, write it down. What's one thing that you've done? Don't worry about your partner. What's one thing that you've done in an argument that you would like to remove off the table is no longer, that's a behavior, that's a line that you're not going to cross anymore. We're all here to support each other. So I do encourage you to go ahead and share it so we can let each other know that we're all in the same place. Oh my gosh, some of the things that we used to do early on in the years, I'm so embarrassed about. It's actually stopped an argument once. I was like, oh my gosh, if we were filmed, what we're doing right now, this would be so embarrassing.
That's actually probably where it starts, is when you become aware that you've been acting unconsciously. And
Yes.
along the way, one or the other of you has to, maybe it's after 5 years of repeating the same pattern over and over, someone wakes up and says, we've been doing this unconsciously, and then you can actually start to change and evolve it.
Totally. Great point, Rod. Okay, so
our first tip is an example of all of it weaves together all of the different principles that we've been talking about, that it's an example of one way of doing the send, receive, play that you described, and in terms of having the courage to intervene, it really kind of ties it all together. Do you want to tell, or should I?
Well, I'll say the tip and you can tell the story.
Okay.
So the tip is to remember that you're both on the same team, which is usually the opposite of what it feels like in that moment, because it feels like you're adversaries, right? You're fighting for your position, and your opponent is your enemy, is your partner. So if you can remember that you're on the same team already, that can change the dynamic significantly. Go ahead.
Yeah, so gosh, we'd been together for, I want to say, more than 15 years. And I don't even remember, honestly. I remember where we were. It was one of those very intense moments where my senses were heightened, but I don't remember the content of the argument. That was really not significant. But in the middle of an extremely familiar dynamic, something that I knew like the back of my hand, Rod turns to me and says, "I'm on your team, Alexandra."
Mm.
And when you said it, I would say 99% of me was clear that was absolutely not true. It wasn't my experience. It's not what the neurochemicals, it's not what my history, it's not what my psychology was telling me. There was no part of me that knew that to be true, except this small sliver on top, which had the possibility of objectively realizing that, yes, that was true, but it wasn't my experience. And it just was shocking. And I just stopped and looked with incredulity. And then I began to consider, and I realized, actually, it's true. We are totally on the same team. We are devoted to having a fantastic relationship, to having both of our needs met, to making choices that really serve each of us and both of us. Like, we really do live in such a way that there's no question we're on the same team, but it didn't feel that way. And so he said that to me, and I knew it was true, but that didn't keep the awareness from arising the next time we fought. And so it took building a habit and
saying it a lot of times.
Yeah, and so then the next time Rod said, "I'm on your team, we're on the same team," it was like it went down smoother and I could digest it more. And it's been a really long time, and that feeling that we're not on the same team just doesn't arise anymore. At least that's what I used to say, because it had been years. But even, I think it was about a month ago, I hadn't had enough sleep. I was feeling prickly. But because I know this pattern and have really done the work to heal it, I actually came to Rod and said, I feel like we're not on the same team. That's where I am right now.
Right, she said it.
Yeah. And
That's so great.
Right, because I recognized, it was like finding an old worn piece of clothing that I hadn't seen in 5 years. And just saying it made the feeling practically go away, and then a hug and a kiss finished it off. But the real tip we want to share is to remember you're on the same team, and either one of you gets to be the person who reminds the other one when it seems forgotten.
It's so powerful and important. Raj and I, in the early years, we'd have the same argument again and again. Didn't matter what it was about, but if he was under a lot of stress that had nothing to do with me, he would still get angry at me. Mm-hmm. And I would look at him, and I remember would say all the time, "I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy."
Right.
And then we turned around because I wanted, instead of a complaint, I wanted to say what I wanted, not what I didn't want. And so I said, "I'm your number one fan. I'm your number one fan." And I did a collage of what it looked like when he was looking at me with those eyes, just like when I'm just trying to help and he's like angry at me. One was even like an angry soccer ball, and he loves soccer, so that was really funny. And I showed it to him, and he was like, "Oh, that's what it's like." And so then over time, I just started saying, "I'm your number one fan," when I felt that. And that dynamic has disappeared. I mean, isn't that the benefit of being in a relationship long-term? Because you do have the same fight over and over again. You get a chance to do it differently and hopefully ultimately retire it.
Right. It's like the gift of Groundhog Day rather than the curse of Groundhog Day. You really do get to rewrite it.
I like that. The gift of Groundhog Day.
And Alexandra, did you say that when you said, did you say you feel like you're not on the same team, or you feel like you are on the same team?
Well,
No,
now
she had gone to him to say that in that dynamic.
she didn't
But
used to.
You said that
used to, when I would be activated, one of the very first feelings I would have is that we were against one another,
Mhm.
even though we weren't.
Right.
But now I don't feel that way. Now I both know it and experience that we're on the same team. And when we fight, I know we're fighting for the good for both of us.
Yeah, I just wanted to presence that because for some people, you may not feel like you're on the same team. And it's either you just don't feel like it, but you are, or maybe you're not yet. I mean, you are because you're married, but maybe you're not holding that space that you're on the same team.
And that's definitely part of the work to do before or after to
Right.
have that agreement. If you're going to want to, if you can make the agreement at other times, it's much easier to call upon it during the fight.
Yes. Yeah. Make the agreement and also sort out if there's anything to sort out around not feeling like you are on the same team. So like with Gabby and me kind of villainizing her or whatever, like it felt so true. Like, you're doing this to me, stop. You know, whether it's like we got to go to this event, that event, and I'm just feeling like maxed out socially or whatever. It felt like she was doing something to me. And what I came to learn is it's my reaction to what she's doing or saying. She's not doing anything to me. I just glanced up at your next bullet point.
Yeah, exactly. It's related.
Back to them, right?
But I also am reminded, I just want to say, of the relationship vision the two of you referred to. I definitely have clients do that exercise often because that helps it build this feeling that you're on and the reality that you're on the same team when you have the shared vision. And certainly that was a great lead into our second tip, which is to take responsibility for your own feelings.
Mhm.
And that's also a skill that takes practice. I mean, you alluded to it in terms of saying I statements, but it usually, the way that your brain works, it usually feels like it's the other person's fault that you feel that way. And so learning that it's something that's coming from inside and not necessarily, usually there's the image or the picture that you make in your mind about what's going on as opposed to the reality of what's going on. And that's the thing that causes the feeling. So taking responsibility for your own story makes it much easier to then take responsibility for the feelings that come from that story.
Mhm.
And I want to add that I feel like I had a lot of intellectual understanding about the importance and the reality of taking responsibility for my feelings long before I had mastery in doing so. I didn't have an internal reference point for what that looked like. I didn't have, as mammals, we learn through imitation, and I didn't have someone to imitate where I could say, oh yes, he or she was really taking responsibility for their feelings. That's how I can do it. So it felt very much like bushwhacking and being like a Christopher Columbus to find my way. And it surprised me to discover what it looks and feels like to take responsibility for my feelings. Like, one of the things we've discovered is when I say everything that I'm feeling with I statements and clarity, that is a way of taking responsibility. So I used to, when I started on this journey, think, oh, to take responsibility for my feelings would be not to say anything unpleasant. But I've discovered this is like, don't try this at home unless you have advanced training with matches and fire extinguishers. But for me, taking responsibility for my feelings includes saying to Rod, I want to rip your face off. I'm not going to touch you, but that's what I feel like right now. And because if I'm feeling that way, he knows it. But for me to name it, in doing so, I'm taking responsibility, and he can relax and it still surprises me how much better you feel when I just say something like that, rather than having it fester and infiltrate the space between us. But I pretend that actually I have noble feelings in the moment.
The truth,
Mhm.
and also that Alexandra, when she says that, she knows, even if she doesn't say it in words, that it's her feeling. It isn't my fault that she feels that way. So the intention makes a huge difference where it's coming from.
Right.
Yeah, I'm writing that down.
Can you share any points on how people can develop the capacity to take responsibility for their own feelings? Because like you said, there's kind of a growth curve there.
Well, the tools like the one that you shared are excellent, because the thing that helped me the most was seeing how the version that I had in my head of what was going on right now was so different than what was actually happening for Alexandra. So when I would say what was happening for me, and she would not hear it, and then she would say what was going on for her, and I would hear it, I say, oh, that's so different. So then it was clear that my feelings were coming from my version of the story, but I had to actually hear what was going on over there for me to see that it was so different from what was happening over here. And that took practice.
Yeah, and that, you know, can include some playful, not in the heat of the moment, times for developing responsibility. So there are times when I've said to Rod, when we were working on this, let's say he said, let's say the kids are in bed, it's 9 o'clock, and he says, I'm gonna go read a book now. And I learned to say, does that mean you don't love me and you don't want to spend time with me? And because I was saying the thing that I was experiencing, and you know, we can say that with a smile now, but it takes a lot of courage to ask a question like that. It's so vulnerable and so
true,
pathetic and devastating, because anytime that I would ask that question, there was a part of me, a significant part of me, that really was concerned the answer was yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had that question. And for Rod to just turn and give a big smile and say, no, I just wanted to read my book. And having enough exchanges like that also contributed greatly to my taking responsibility for my own feelings. And again, seeing that I'm the one generating them. Whether he's reading a book or not is not what's causing that feeling to arise.
Right.
And the bonus tip is apologies don't work. You have to do a do-over. You have to actually, for me to say I'm sorry or I didn't mean it, she still has the same feelings. But when I can actually, when we can agree to have a do-over, this is like the hugest, that made a huge change in our relationship, to say, okay, let's do it again. And have me say, I'm feeling like I need a little bit of me time. I love you and appreciate you and our relationship. And I'd like to go read for an hour, my book that I've been looking forward to reading for the past 3 weeks. And then she has the opportunity to feel the different feelings that come from me saying it a different way. So do-overs, I'm a big fan of do-overs.
Nice.
I love that sometimes Raj and I will even do the whole pretend we're going in reverse. We'll go.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can request do-overs too. Can I get a
do-over? Can I get a do-over?
One of the things that I just wanted to point out here is that, part of relationship is healing wounds from your past, right? Because if you're not healing them, you're just reacting to them. And through what you're saying around using the communication tools, sharing vulnerably, which is so critical. I learned that from Gabby's dad. Like, we expect people to deal with our vomiting upset instead of just sharing vulnerably what's going on for us over here. Through all of those things, we can sort of differentiate ourselves from our past-based stories and choose something different and take responsibility. So this is great. Love this sequence of
Which
tips here.
leads right into the third tip, which is that conflict can be an opportunity for personal growth, because then you can really experience and see, oh, there's this old pattern of mine that's being triggered here, and then overcome it. And we've been giving examples of overcoming patterns, and then the pattern goes away and hardly happens anymore.
Yeah, and one of
Yeah.
the things that I often do with clients, if I'm coaching a couple and there's a prickly moment that arises, to just say to one or both of them, how old do you feel right now? Very often the answer is an age long before the person ever met their spouse. And so it's in the presence of the spouse that this 3, 5, 13-year-old feeling is arising. And so taking responsibility for our feelings and using the conflict as an opportunity for growth includes seeing, oh, the seed of this feeling was planted long ago, well before this relationship began. And here I get to kind of bump up against it because I'm in relationship and use it to heal, because otherwise it would stay in the dark.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a gift, actually.
That's cool.
Yeah, the relationship, it's like the rock, you know, the snake has to kind of rub against the rock to get the old skin to come off. And that's the relationship where we're kind of rubbing up against it to get off the old skin and become our new.
Ooh, that gets into the dirty part.
We knew we'd get the snake skin in there
Yeah.
somewhere, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
rubbing
yeah.
against that hard part.
Rubbing against your partner.
We knew we'd get a nuzzle in there somewhere.
One of the things Gabby does when she's working with clients in, I think, a rift residue removal,
Residue removal.
is has the person that is experiencing upset share how that came about for them in their past. You know, what is the thing, like, oh, my dad didn't pay attention to me, or whatever.
What's the earliest you can remember that familiar, that feeling? You know, identify what the feeling and the emotion is in the present, and then connecting that with the earliest that they can remember feeling that emotion.
Which then allows the person to have the other person to have compassion, and you also to gain some consciousness around why you're reacting.
Because if you're not making someone wrong, then they can hear you. It's when you're blaming them that instantly they have to go into defending. So if they're sharing a story from their childhood that was well before you, it's much easier for somebody like, oh, that was a terrible experience, I'm so sorry. As opposed to, it's not my fault that you have this experience.
Yeah.
So one
Yeah.
kind of demands defensiveness, and the other draws out compassion.
So beautiful. Yes.
Well, love these 3 tips, and they just really fit well with each other as a
They do
trio.
as a trio,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, they're not
my
3 separate.
mechanical engineer.
Well, I love that, bringing both minds. We're bringing the heart and we're bringing the mind, and all of those pieces together. As I mentioned before, we take Raj's business practices and bring them into relationship, and relationship practices and bring them into business. We are holistic people, and there's a lot to learn from both the practical and the magical. So we're bringing both.
Yes.
Mhm.
Beautiful. So for those of you, if you would like to find out more, go back one slide. Oh, maybe it's the next slide afterwards. She moved it. Oh, there's one missing. So this slide's supposed to be there twice, but it looks like it got moved rather than copied. But you can find out more at their Facebook group, Nourish Your Committed Relationship. I love that. It's just the word nourish. It's an active verb. It's not just this one-time fix. It's not heal. It's not reset. It's nourish. It's just that one word just indicates what it's all about, that ongoing attention. And you can also find out more at alexandrastockwell.com. So we'll come back to that slide, but now I gotta go back to that one. Okay, now if you are new to Relationship Fun and Games, go ahead and check this out, our Relationship Reset Kit for you, our 4-part mini email course with some of our favorite tips, and there's a short video on each of those tips too. I love the hot and bothered backseat driver. You'll never fight.
I know, what a great name for a tip. Woo!
We like to make them memorable, right? And you'll also get the free guidebook with dozens of tips for keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty. So you can get that at any time. And if you want to dive in a little deeper with relationship fun and games, we've got options for you. There's our ebook with dozens of tips again for you. Our P3 store, if you're getting ready for the holidays, you want to get some stocking stuffers or things for keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty for any old day. You don't need to wait for a holiday. You can check out the store. Past episodes of the show, I think this is like our 75th episode or something of that nature. And of course, personalized coaching. The picture there is from our property here. We can do it online, but I love people to have a vacation, have a retreat, and just happen to leave that retreat with a shared relationship vision created. So, but whatever it is, whether it's with me, with another couple, with Alexandra, with the clients that she sees and all she has to offer, find somebody, find someone, find something, and just engage, just play full out, because it's not about finding the right thing. It's about exploring, as we were talking about that word nourish, right? It's about nourishing your relationship and how
It's also knowing that it's possible that it could get better and believing in that.
Yes.
And then finding a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yes, and practicing day after day, day after day.
Yeah, that is just so important. I just want to highlight that sometimes we lose faith or belief that it can get better, and we settle for like just
how it is.
That's how it is. It's how it's going to be, and we just kill off a good portion of our happiness. And it doesn't have to be that way. Gabby and I are such a great example of that. We started up super messy, and now it's just gets better and better even a decade in.
We were advised not to get married at our engagement party the day of the wedding, and so that's how we ended up doing relationship work, is because people saw us go from such a messy relationship to such a great one and wanted us to share it.
Yeah.
So here we are sharing it with you and inviting wonderful couples and also relationship experts. Sometimes they're a combination of both. Next week, we will actually have a single woman, Dr. Allison Ash. Actually, I think she is in a relationship. I'm not sure, but she's going to be on her own. Some beloveds just aren't as comfortable. So, Rod, thank you so much for jumping in with Alexandra tonight and having your first interview with us. It's just a delight.
So she's going to be focused on how to keep the sex dirty during, and come find out about the 4 nerve pathways to orgasm and how to stimulate the internal clitoris.
So this is right, as we say, in the heat of an argument. This is in the heat of it, of getting it on. So if you want to know when to slow it down, when to amp it up, and how to mix it up masterfully, then join us for next week's episode. Do note it's on a different day and time because we're going to be on a plane at the irregular time we didn't realize. So it'll be the day later, October 31st. It's on Wednesday, not Tuesday, at 5:30 p.m. PST with Dr. Allison Ash.
And I love it how she has a t-shirt that says same team.
Same team. Oh, isn't that right? Look at that.
That's so good.
Yes.
That's great. Good noticing, Rod. And again, find out more about Alexandra and Rod, and they have some layers of upcoming offerings. She has a free 3-part course that's going to be coming up. So check out her Facebook group and her website and stay in touch with her. Alexandra and Rod, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your relationship wisdom.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. What a pleasure. It was so lovely to dialogue with both of you.
And everyone who's watching us live or on the replay, thank you for your time and your attention and just for caring about love. The world needs more examples of great relationships out there. And we're here to help you have yours be even more playful, peaceful, and passionate. So let us know how we can support you, and join us next week. See you on Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.